here we are going to be going in depth about Fabula Ultima, Pathfinder, Vampire the Masquerade, Fate, and Shadow Dark. But I'm just going to touch on some of the ones that are fairly popular. So as D&D is traditionally high fantasy, it's generally... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So just to clear things up, the purpose of this panel is not to like trash talk D&D. I know there are a lot of people that are moving away from D&D now for various reasons. Some people have a grudge against Hasbro. Some people are just tired of it. I personally still play D&D. It's gutted so that it's barely recognizable, but it's still a 5e system. Really what we're just trying to do is help people browse and look for more alternatives in the world of tabletop games other than D&D, just to make sure, things get stale, you're looking for a new flavor, or you want to branch out to something new. We want to highlight a couple of things to make sure that, maybe there's something out there for you that you would want to try as an alternative. So, just going over our list of brief things we want to give an honorable mention to. First up would be Shadow.
Oh, okay. So, yes.
Could you
D&D...
hit that mic a little bit harder?
Oh, I'm sorry. Slay dragons, seduce demons, or vice versa. Shadowrun is a more modern take. It's urban fantasy with sci-fi and futuristic aspects to it. It is a setting where magic, fantasy creatures, and cyberpunk genre all coexist. There's still orcs, trolls, elves, dwarves, goblins, ghouls, dragons. So what it is the world is damaged by a massive magical event, and now industrial espionage and corporate warfare have run rampant. So there's these operations called shadow runs, which are data thefts or physical break-ins, typically performed on corporations or organizations, either by rivals, underworld figures, deckers for hire. Deckers are their word for hackers. Now, shadow runners, which the name of the game, are super skilled specialists who are known for their feats, accomplishments in completing these kinds of jobs. And for the most part, the gameplay revolves around on the organized crime aspect of the world. So that's where the focus is. You typically play a shadow runner. It is the name of the game, and that's the role you'll take in that setting. So that's just a little bit about Shadowrun. I'm not super familiar with it myself, but I know it is a very popular one, so I did want to bring it up if that sounds interesting to any of you. And now losing some of those, so the Shadowrun, where it's kind of like cyberpunk and fantasy all in one. We've got now losing this fantasy aspect, we have got cyberpunk. So if you've played 2077 or watched Edge Runners, those are all based on this tabletop RPG. So with cyberpunk, it is set in our world, but offshoots from the 80s. So there's wars, there's nuclear fallouts, economic collapse, food flights, famines, all that stuff needed to make our perfect dystopian setting. And of course, the mega corporations. Get those megacorps that control everything due to lack of regulations and enforcement from a dwindling government. This is when bioengineering has its rapid development, and those corps are pumping out all that cool cyber tech. In cyberpunk, there are 4 tenets to live by when making a cyberpunk character. That is style over substance, attitude is everything, always take it to the edge, and break the rules. And they have some really cool rules. So, how you have classes in D&D. The classes that you can play are rocker boys, which are charismatic musicians. You've got bodyguards and assassins, which are called solos. Net runners, which are hackers. Fixers, medias, techs, corpos, med techs, all of those really cool, unique roles that you wouldn't see in D&D. And something that I think is really cool about cyberpunk is the aspect of empathy, as the more cyberware you install, because it's all about that body modding, weapons, optics, implants, the more humanity you lose. And when you do lose humanity, you lose empathy points. And if any of you are familiar with the video game or the anime, there's something called cyber psychosis, where you kind of go crazy. And so when you do lose too much empathy, you do experience cyber psychosis, which I think is really cool. Okay, this one, Masks. It's not super popular, but I thought I would put it in there because I've been looking for a superhero RPG to play, tabletop, And so one that my friend suggested to me was called Masks, and I did like a little bit of looking into it. I think it's really cool as well. It is a superhero system that is kind of like a coming of age story. It is set in like a metropolis called like Halcyon City, and you sort of play like a team of young adult heroes. It's kind of like similar to like Teen Titans or Young Justice, and the stats are also pretty interesting because like you have like 5 different labels that a stat can have, starting from like mundane to superior to savior to freak to danger. And the cool thing about the stats is that they reflect how the characters view themselves, so it can fluctuate based on that. And if another character like has influence over your character, that can shift their label as well.
All right, now that our honorable mentions are done, it's about time to get to the actual talking points of today's panel. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. Some snippets here for you. Pathfinder. Now, question. How many of you here have actually heard the name Pathfinder? Of course. Even if you haven't played it, you've probably heard of it. You've probably heard of it as, you know, D&D, but not really D&D. And, you know, to an extent, that's kind of true. It's made as an offshoot of D&D by people who used to write for D&D, the comics. A lot of people think of it as like sort of a D&D light. What I like to think of it more is it's definitely its own game. But if you like D&D, you like the mechanics of D&D, and you want to see that expanded upon, Pathfinder definitely might be a game you want to try out. So, what is Pathfinder? Created by Paizo Inc., Pathfinder is considered by many to be the main Dungeons & Dragons alternative. At its core level, the RPG still helps to fill that very similar high fantasy niche that traditional D&D would. It has action-adventure fantasies, a variety of different races and classes that you can choose from, more so than D&D actually. That's why the expanded part, there's a lot more variety, a lot more mixes and matches that you can do to make your character. So if you're like D&D and you say, I want to keep in this same vein, but I don't necessarily want to keep going with this system. I want to see something else. I want to try different mechanics. I want to try more depth. Then I would recommend going with Pathfinder. So one of the reasons that you might play Pathfinder specifically. So I have a few reasons why that I think everyone would probably be universally agreeing that this is probably a good reason as to why you can play Pathfinder. Number one, depth. Pathfinder's depth starts as early as character creation. Even the process of, you know, building the character that you're going to make is a lot more nuanced and varied than just traditional Dungeons & Dragons. So, quick question. Hypothetical, how many of you here have spent some time, you know, making your D&D character? You make up this cool backstory for them. Give them all these things and bits and baubles that you want them to do, all these quirks, you think this would be my coolest character ever. 3 hours later, they die to a goblin. I see a couple of hands. It happens. It sucks. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that happens, but it doesn't feel good as a player. As a player, if you spend all this time making something that you're going to be investing time into for like hundreds and hundreds of hours over a long-form campaign, you don't want it to just like go out just like that. So one of the main reasons, if you've never really had experiences creating characters in anything other than D&D, you might be wondering what's so different about Pathfinder. For one, the main thing about D&D is rolling your stats, right? You roll your stats, you pick it, you put it through attributes, and you either make a character based off of that, or you try to make it fit with the existing character template that you already made beforehand. So I think the biggest thing that Pathfinder does, in contrast to D&D, is that there is no rolling of stats. From the very beginning, you pick what you want to be, and then from there, it will give you ability score bonuses based off of your choices. So let's say I want to pick like an orc barbarian. Well, I'm an orc, and one of their racial feats is they get a +2 to strength. I'm a barbarian, that's another +2 to strength. let's say I pick a soldier background, another +2 to strength, and you get free boosts and bonuses that you can put wherever you want to. So it's another +2 to strength if I want. So level 1, I'm starting at 18 strength. I'm good at doing what I can do. I can hit things really hard. I'm good at being strong. My character feels good to play. It feels like I'm doing something. I don't die immediately. Next, agency. Having more freedom in character creation, actually playing the character feels more rewarding. The action economy is different. It allows players to do more even at lower level. Other hypothetical. How many of you have done this? Okay, let's do a little bit. You're going to be right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to roll to attack this goblin.
Okay.
I roll a 4. Do I hit?
No.
Okay, I'm now going to sit here for the next 30 minutes until it's my turn again.
Yes.
Hate that. The worst thing about D&D is low-level D&D, mainly because there's just so little that you can do that actually getting through it just feels like a slog. In Pathfinder, you already start out with a lot, and as you level up and expand, it just sort of varies your scope of what you can do. So, for example, features. Everyone loves features. You get them every 4 levels of D&D. In Pathfinder, you get them everywhere. It's a mandatory part of the character. You don't have to choose between that or, an ability score increase. You can get both. They're also vary based on what you pick. There's 4 different types that you get. There's general, which is, general feats that anyone can get, something like moving faster or getting a climb speed or something like that. Ancestry, which is related to, your upbringing, little quirks about, your genealogy and your races that, would help you, not necessarily numerically, but it'll give you more knowledge or an extra attack that only you can do if you're that race, or skills and certain proficiencies that you wouldn't normally have. Class feats are feats that you get from your class. That's about it. And skill feats.
Yeah, do you got a question over there?
Okay.
Oh, never mind.
And skill feats are feats that are used to enhance your general skills with what your character is good at. Say something like diplomacy, intimidation, etc. Things that can help you, perform checks related to that. So the difference between a level 1 D&D character and a level 1 Pathfinder character is astronomical in the things that you can really do. And just as a better experience, if you do want to feel like, you're doing something and that your role in the game actually matters, Pathfinder would be a good alternative. Oh, and one more thing. In addition to these 2 feats, everything on Paizo's website for Pathfinder is completely free. So, when it comes to, you see there's an asterisk there. You ain't got to pay for shit. Almost. When it comes to mechanics or rules, all rule books, gameplay information, mechanics, character building information is 100% free and available online on the official Pathfinder website, Archives of Nephis. Otherwise, the link is right there. It really has everything that you can ask for. If you want to search Barbarian, it'll pull up the class information. If you want to search up, Goblin Warrior, it'll pull up the little NPC monster block. If you want to pull up Greatsword, it'll give you every item that's related to a Greatsword. Everything's all there. Paizo wants you to play their game. They don't want you to pay for it. Well, they do want you to pay for it, but they want you to enjoy playing the game without having to buy all these different books and things. Oh.
I was curious about the challenge rating for Pathfinder, for example, D&D. How is there a more balanced challenge rating when you have a certain number of players?
So, in D&D, the challenge rating is applied to it's supposedly applied to a party of 4 adventurers at whatever level the challenge rating is. So with Pathfinder, it's a bit more individualized in that it'll be if this is a level 4 challenge rating, this is applied for a level 4 character. A level 4 character can take this on. So it's really more so building the encounter based on not just spamming a bunch of low-level enemies and calling that an encounter, there's strategic placements that your DM has to do, and also teamwork is a lot more varied in Pathfinder, I would say, than D&D is, where in D&D, you know, you all have your classes, but like, so you have like a ranger, a sorcerer, who else is a bad class? Most druids, and a wizard. The wizard's probably going to be the one who can do the most and the one who the game is probably going to revolve around to an extent. Whereas in Pathfinder, every class matters. Every class can do something very well, and they all bring something to the table that helps them form a cohesive unit that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Before you get into the lore, though, I do have like something to say about the mechanics that I like personally about Pathfinder. When we played, we had like that 3 token system that's like 2D, right? So with that 3 token system, you have like 3 like, actions you can do, and like movement does cost one of those action tokens. And something I like about that is that like in D&D, you either get to hit like if you have extra attack, you get to hit twice, or you get to hit once, and then you get to like move like 30 feet generally, right? So it's like cool to me that there is this like token economy for like because even at level 1, you can like you can take a second attack with a penalty of like a certain hit score penalty to take that second attack. But I like that because like what are you saying that like if I don't move 30 feet, I can't hit again? Because I'm pretty sure the time that it takes me to like run 30 feet, I could hit in that time, right? So with like the Pathfinder, right, you can just, if you already are at your enemy, like you are where you want to be, you can use the rest of your tokens on attacking, which makes sense to me, right? Like that time that I take to run 30 whole feet, you can't like attack again in D&D, but you can like sacrifice movement for extra like, another attack.
Any question in the front row?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, I'm just a humongous Paizo shill. I love Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's my favorite system.
That's great.
But I just love the 3 action system. A friend of mine describes it as Tetris. Because you can take it and say, okay, I'm 30 feet away, I spend 1 action to run, 1 to hit, 1 to raise my shield. Or I can spend 2 actions to cast a spell and 1 action to buff. Or I can spend 1 action to hit, another action to hit, a 3rd action to demoralize this guy, and so on and so forth. It's really easy to fit all these together for any play style.
And it just makes sense to me, like, because like if I'm not moving, I should be able to use that time to attack or raise my shield or whatever it is.
Okay. So, presenter, what about the lore? Everyone likes lore. I like lore. You all probably like lore. You play role-playing games. Sure is. So the one thing about Pathfinder 2E that is not free would be any pre-made adventures or lore books. The game can't be completely free. Paizo has to keep the lights on somehow, and this is a good way to do it. A lot of in-setting lore is available online through community sharing, websites like YouTube, Reddit, search in Pathfinder lore, and you'll get like just lists and lists and lists of hours of content of how to do, of what the world setting is like in Pathfinder, just to help you get a grasp if you would like to pursue it, which we do recommend because the Pathfinder books are really cool, are really nice. We recommend supporting the official release if you can, but if not, it's probably no big deal. Paizo's not going to kill you.
And we're not sponsored, so.
And we're not sponsored, so we don't really care. Also, like D&D, Pathfinder is exceptionally easy to homebrew. There's various different resources on how to do it. There's forums on Archives of Nethys. There's how to do a homebrew Pathfinder campaign. I believe I actually saw several panels here touching on how to do homebrew campaigns and things like D&D and Pathfinder. So it's out there if you're interested. Moving on. Our next present here would be Vampire the Masquerade.
Alright, has anyone heard of Vampire the Masquerade? Oh, okay, that's a lot of you. Oh no, they know more than me. Okay,
We never played it. I've played it.
Wonderful. Okay, so this one also does have like I think I was like talking about Cyberpunk earlier, which has like a bunch of video games. So does Vampire the Masquerade. It is part of the World of Darkness system. So Vampire the Masquerade is inspired by Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, and Nightlife. It's a system where you get to play as a vampire, referred to as the Kindred, in this fictionalized gothic punk modern world. It's like dark, it's moody, it's supposed to have that unique gothic feel, similar to Ravenloft, if you're familiar with that, in D&D, but with like this urban setting. So it belongs to the World of Darkness. In World of Darkness, there is Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension, Wraith the Oblivion, Changeling the Dreaming. They're all like in the same world. They're interconnected. However, Vampire the Masquerade is the first one that they created, and it has had many iterations since. It inspired spin-offs in the form of board games, books, comics, TV, web series, and video games. There is a pretty fun battle royale on Steam called like Blood Hunt that it belongs to, and it's pretty fun if you guys like battle royales.
Actually, that's shut down. That doesn't exist anymore.
They cut.
Oh, really?
It's gone.
They took down.
The servers are down. Yeah.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my god.
Never mind, guys.
That's fun.
Well, it was really fun. You get to play as a vampire and beat up other vampires. Looks like just out here spreading misinformation.
Just on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, a little bit about the lore. There's something called the Embrace, which refers to the turning of a human into a vampire. I'm going to go through this pretty quick because the Vampire the Masquerade just so much about it, and we do have so many other things that we want to talk to you about. So, the lore of that. So, once you are turned into a vampire, the vampire that turns you is your sire. Your vampiric power is determined by your generation, which is like the distance between you and the first vampire, Cain, or supposedly. So, for example, if Cain turns someone and they're their first generation, that vampire turns someone, their second generation, and so on. The beast is like a savage, carnal, predatory drive within all vampires. It's a very important aspect in gameplay, but also a key theme storytelling of Vampire the Masquerade. So, when threatened, enraged, or hungry, the beast can take over the vampire and cause them to go into a frenzy. It takes the vampire's unconscious mind and makes people on a rampage. Vitae is the supernatural blood in vampires and special properties that a vampire can use to make a thrall, for example. Masquerade refers to the organized conspiracy that vampires do not exist, so that's what Vampire the Masquerade is. And so that is orchestrated by something called the Camarilla, which is, I guess, like vampire government in a way. And it is also like so the Masquerade's like a major point of contention between like the two main factions, which brings it into the society: sects, clans, and blood alliance. There are factions and sub-factions, but the main sects are going to be the Camarilla, which most vampires fall under, following traditions, and the Masquerade, and then there's the Sabbat, which believes vampires are superior to humans and should rule over them. There are several different clans and bloodlines, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, so I'm going to go over a few of my favorites. My favorite is going to be like Toreador, the coolest clan. They value like art and beauty and talent and hedonism. Brownos are the clans of like thieves and charlatans, and Ventru are like leaders and aristocrats. There's a lot of different ones. They all have like different specialties, different values. They also do give like certain like perks to them for belonging to any of them. So a little bit into the gameplay when you're creating a character. So there are base stats like strength and wits, just like you would have in D&D. And then there are more specific like cult, larceny, brawl, shooting guns. Your driving, I think, as well. Your stats will have anywhere between 0 to 5 dots, with 0 being the bare minimum and 5 being like virtuistic. Tenets and convictions. Okay, so tenets are going to be like the unspoken rules for the world of your game. Convictions are the rules for your characters made by you, and each conviction has like a touchstone. So that's like what keeps your character's humanity in check. So for like example, right, if your vampire really values family, a touchstone might be like a sibling or something like that. And then into the mechanics, it does use a D10 system. So let's say if you're like rolling to punch someone, you have, it's a little complicated. So you have like 3 dots in strength and you have 2 dots in brawl, right? So you would have a dice pool of 5. So no, it's like based on like the amount of dots you have in something. And if you have like points of hunger, so whenever you wake up in the game, you do have to like roll for hunger to see how hungry you are, and you can eat somebody to like stave off that hunger. But for the purposes of this example, you have 2 points in hunger, so then 2 of your die would be hunger die, which I think is just, it's a pretty unique mechanic. So you have 5 dice, 2 of them are hunger die because you have 2 points of hunger. So you can roll 5 die, anything between 1 to 5, because again these are D10s, is a fail, 6 to 9 is a success, 10 is a success as well. Okay. If you have a pair of 10s, it's +2 success. So So the more pairs of 10s you have, the more your successes are up. So the amount of successes is how you determine if the thing that you're trying to complete is a success or not. So for let's say example, you have let's say you have to get 3 successes to successfully punch this guy. As long as 3 of your dice are over 6 and up. However, onto this hunger die that I was talking about. With the hunger die, if one of those is a 1 and you fail, it's a bestial failure. And if one of those is a 10, it is a messy critical. So these hunger die sort of, you know how earlier I was talking about the beast? With these hunger die, if it's a 1 or a 10, it's either a messy critical or a bestial failure, and you do get compulsed by the beast. So some examples of what could happen is you are paranoid, or you give in to hunger, and it's just it's a momentary lapse of judgment, basically. And then you do have these points of willpower as well that you can use to re-roll any non-hunger die from a pool. That's all I have for gameplay about Vampire the Masquerade. But it's a very cool system. You guys should consider it if you like vampires or anything in that scope.
Not to this way. Okay. So, Fabula Ultima. Going back into the fantasy niche for a second, we're all at MAGFest. I'm assuming we all like video games to some extent. How many of you?
I actually hate video games.
Okay.
Then this one's not for you.
How many of you here like Final Fantasy? That's what about I expected. Have you ever thought, what if I could play Final Fantasy with my friends as an RPG? Enter Fabula Ultima. So what is Fabula Ultima? Fabula Ultima is a tabletop role-playing game taking heavy inspiration from popular TTRPG video games as Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest, Xenogears, Golden Sun, and many, many more. Created by Emanuele Deletto and published by Need Games. Fabula Ultima system provides simplified tabletop elements with flashy JRPG flair to put some a unique, action-packed, and streamlined experience of role-playing. So if you wanted more depth with Pathfinder, if you actually want a little bit less to worry about than D&D, maybe the dices and the stats and the skills, they're a little bit too much for you. Tracking, inventory is a little bit too much for you. Fabula Ultima might be what you want to consider, especially if you are like a weeb or something.
How many of you are weebs? Okay. I expect more hands, but all right.
So, Fabula Ultima is a suitable alternative for those who are seeking a less mechanically intensive and less tactical, less is more style approach to gameplay, with an emphasis on bonds between characters, making your hero, and influencing the narrative as it happens. There's no official resource site for Fabula Ultima, unfortunately. There are PDFs that you can buy and hardcover versions of the actual book that you can buy online, which we do recommend that you do, of course, to support the official release.
But we're not sponsored, so.
Well, it also has, a sprawling Discord and Reddit community, so if you want to get out there and start looking into it, check out YouTube, they definitely have things that you can have. So what are the reasons that you might play Fabula Ultima? Like stated before, there's many reasons you might want to consider. I've highlighted a few more, and I think that as going through them, you'll see why you might want to play. Collaborative narrative. Now, you might be saying this bullet point and going, well, no shit. It's a tabletop game. That's all it is a collaborative narrative. Let me explain a little bit further. So, it's collaborative storytelling in the fact that in Fabula Ultima, the main thing of what you're supposed to do is you, as a player, or as a game master or whoever, you're supposed to get together, so like say have a session 0, and talk about what kind of game you would like to play. Sort of settings you would like to use, and get plot hook ideas from there. You don't have to do it this way, but it's strongly recommended in the books. It helps that there's no DM brainchild of this world that they're working on that the players aren't really engaged in. You want to make sure that your players are engaged first and foremost. And doing this, talking about, oh, I want to play, this kind of world or this kind of setting. I want to have a character that does this. I want to play a storyline about this. Getting that all out before the actual gameplay helps your players be more invested, helps them have more fun during the sessions. It helps you as a game master have more fun during the sessions because you know how to cater to them and how to essentially put together a game that you and everyone else are going to enjoy. In addition, players themselves will talk out their character concepts to the rest of the group. So there's no hidden backstories that you have to unlock after like 30 or 40 sessions of this guy being like a prick. Everything's out on the table. Everything is there for everyone to know. And then from there, you go on bonds. So the bond system, in fact, of Ultima is very interesting. It helps give a reason as to why, your party would actually be together. So say, for example, there are 5 players in a campaign. I know player 1 and player 2. Player 2 knows player 3 and player 4. Player 4 knows me. We all know each other through that connection. But, it's not necessarily, starting off as complete strangers, and we're not all super tight-knit. We have to roll out with this very intricate backstory of why we're all here. But it's, a starting point as to, these are your connections. Make them stronger. If you make them stronger, you'll do better at the game. Creating your perfect character to take the stage. To elaborate on the character creation in terms of mechanics, it uses less than traditional TV, but in a way that gives you more for your value. For example, what I think the most important part of mechanical gameplay is D&D has 12 classes, and it has 20 levels to go through, level 1 to level 20. Fabula Ultima has 19 classes, and it has 50 levels to go through. Now you might be thinking, that's not really less than what you said. And you'd be right, except for the fact that, a couple of things. For one, you start at level 5. And the story, you're already a seasoned adventurer. You already know what you're doing. You're not a newbie or anything like that. You can play one if you like, but you're not really going to have that fun of an experience. Number 2, multi-classing is not only mandatory, it is a part of the system that you need to do in order to build, your perfect, bombastic JRPG protagonist that you're going to swap through dungeons with all your friends and your party and things like that. It helps vary for diverse builds. So say I want to be like a strong guy. I want to be like a tank. But at the same time, I want to have like a big bow. I can pick the sharpshooter, and I can pick the knight, and I can pick something else that can synergize between those two. Classes cap out at level 10, so you're not going to be stuck in those for a while. It varies you to mix and match between several different classes to really get your playstyle down, and based on what kind of playstyle you want to do. In addition, you only really need to worry about 4 stats as opposed to 6, which would be might, willpower, dexterity, and insight. And how good you are at those can be determined by the dice size that you make checks with the skills, which are just D6s, D8s, and D10s. And you get to decide, do I want a D6 in this skill or a D10 in this skill? And then from there, you can kind of sort of min-max to see what you're better at. So there's a heavy focus on connections and agency. Like I said earlier, first we're focusing on player connections is one thing I want to touch briefly on. When playing this game, you will establish bonds with your party members. Start off with groups of at least 5 or 6. You and another player could narratively have a bond with another. And from that connection, you can start making connections with your own party and have them be better with each other. In the game, there is a resource called Fabula Points, which you can use to invoke a couple of things. Everyone gets them. They're one of the main things that you can use to gain XP and level up and get stronger in the game. They can be used to do things such as invoke a skill. If you want to re-roll a skill check or do an active skill check, re-roll a dice, strengthen a bond between you, a party member, or an NPC. There are NPC bonds as well. Or change the story by adding a new element or altering the elements of the story that already existed. So these are really used to get yourself kind of like a tight situation. Like say you find yourself and your friends in fighting this villain. This villain has a big gun, that he's going to shoot you with, and you're going to die. You invoke your fabula point. DM, I'd like to make it so his gun jams, and so he can't kill us, and we all happen to get away safely. That's something that you could do. And from there, you can just really kind of work with the system. It's not something that you want to hoard, though, because like I said, it's your main way of leveling up.
Like, what is the extent of these like points you mentioned? Like, could I make it 0 gravity?
If your DM could find a reason for it, absolutely.
Meteor hits in that moment.
A meteor hits in that moment, that dude just
Blown in the
dies.
head.
The meteor star explodes and the entire world is destroyed.
Yeah, that could happen. That'd be a fun way to end the campaign. And lastly, as opposed to D&D, if you're playing not Theater of the Mind, the one thing that you're probably going to have to worry about is, making battle maps. And for a lot of people, they love making battle maps. They like making terrain in like little battlefields that people, put their little minis on and you march across it. People love that. I also like that to an extent. But if you don't like that, then this is probably something for you, as there's no battle maps necessary. Everything is theater of the mind. It's really going to look more like a JRPG screen where you're all standing in a line and you're all facing the enemy. There's like a little fight select menu of what you want to do. You kind of have to envision battles like that just to really get a look for it.
You guys like making battle maps?
Yeah.
I see people nodding and I see people shaking their head.
I'm gonna go home and make one after this. For a session that's tomorrow.
Oh,
Hey, good luck.
I like to rip them off of Reddit. There's so many of them. There's like r/battle maps. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they stopped putting grids in it though, because then matching the grids up to my automated
Yeah,
system.
no, yeah. Oh my, it's such
I
a
don't know
thing.
what
Yeah,
to
I
do.
understand. No more grids.
But presenter, what about the lore? Like I've said, there are, it's completely homebrew. There is like no real main setting. They do give suggestions. For example, there's high fantasy, which would be your classic, JRPG, swords and sorcery. Go to the castle, get the princess, kill the dragon, yada yada yada. Kill the princess, get the dragon.
Love that.
Natural fantasy, which is really more focused on, a bunch of little villages spread out like throughout a continent, harmony and peace with nature and the beasts around it, going off with natural magic of the land. And techno fantasy, which is if you're more of a Magitech, fantasy person like I am, Final Fantasy 15 and 16 and things like that, that's definitely something that you want. So to really sum it up, there is no lore. Next, we are going to be talking about the fate system.
Okay. The fate.
Oh,
The fate system. So the fate system is super simple. It is a generic RPG system with no lore, no fixed setting, and no genre. It is entirely customizable. It is designed to offer minimal obstruction to role-playing by assuming that players want to make fewer dice rolls. I know a lot of people are dice goblins, but in case you really want to focus on role-playing, that is what Fate is for. So the gameplay uses fudge die. Is anyone familiar with fudge die?
Sounds delicious.
Oh, one person, a single person knows what fudge die. Okay, so fudge die are 6-sided die with 2 blank sides, 2 negative sides, and 2 positive sides. So negatives cancel out positives. So the more positives are more successes dependent on however many your GM decides you need. So let's say if you need 2 successes to successfully lockpick this door, and you're rolling 6 die. If you have 2 negatives and 4 positives, that's like a success. That's 2 successes, and so on. So a lot of canceling out. It's very, very simple. Yes.
Doesn't that kind of make an issue where you don't necessarily want to get more dice because each dice could hurt you as much as it could help you?
Yes. This is true. Yeah. So more dice, but also dependent on how many successes you need, you might need a certain amount of die for the probability to actually be valid. Let's say if you need 3 successes, you don't want to have only 3 die. That'd be pretty tough. You can use like regular dice, you know, if you use like, you can make 1 to 2 as your negatives, 3 to 4 as your blanks, yes.
Is getting net negatives a bad thing? Like if
Yeah,
you can get
usually.
below
Yeah, usually. So like, if you have negatives, it's sort of like rolling like, you know, 1 or something like that, you know, if you have a lot of negatives. It's just super customizable, so like it can be dependent on your DM. So like if your GM is like, yeah, negatives is fine, that's fine. But if your GM is like, yeah, if you have 3 negatives, you like spontaneously explode. Then yeah, you know, it's because it's so customizable. So if that's what your GM wants, then yeah. But you know, it's up to them to sort of make up the scale, because again, it's so freeform. So they will decide how many die that people will have, or like how many die that you would use in this situation, how many die you would use in that situation, or just if you're using a certain amount of die in general. Another awesome thing about Fate is just like, you know, how we keep advertising things being free. Fate, the core book you can pick up. It is, like, just if you Google Fate core system, it is like a pay what you want, so you can just pay 0 if you want. And if you really like it, you know, you can go back and buy it again for actual money, you know, supporting them or whatnot. Let's see, what was I at? And then, so there are skills, you know, just like with Fudge Die. There are skills and attributes where skills are rated from terrible, poor, mediocre, fair, good, and great, and superb. In Fate, rather than using attributes like strength and intelligence, it uses a long list of skills that can assume that the players are mediocre, unless specifically stated. And then in Fate, there are 4 actions that you can take. Again, they're so simple. They are attack, defend, overcome obstacle, and create advantage. So those are like the different actions, and then you can perform like stunts. So there are stunts and there are aspects. Stunts are predetermined exceptional abilities that would give your character a mechanical benefit. So like if, for example, again, because it's so wide, let's say you're playing, let's say you are playing a high fantasy, right? One of the stunts, I mean, if you're playing a high fantasy, why wouldn't you just play like D&D or Pathfinder? But, so like the point of Fate is that you are like, I'll get into the point of Fate, but so the stunts that you can have are, okay, so for an example, let's say like the thing that you're playing, let's say you really like Star Wars. Okay, so let's say you really like Star Wars and you want to make up a Star Wars universe. You can use Fate for that. So a like stunt that your character can have is like lightsaber wielding. So if you are like making an attack with a lightsaber, right, it's predetermined that you have a +2 bonus because you are really good at using lightsabers. And so that's what a stunt would be. A mechanical a aspect is something that would be like determined by you, like the player. Like let's say if your player has like picked up a super special lightsaber that's like super strong, that would give you another benefit, so you can get like just like flat bonuses off of stunts or aspects to like get better rolls instead of just like, so like you'd have like +2 successes, which could like negate out if you, for example, rolled 3 negatives and 2 positives. So you have like that +2 like on top of that. So that comes out to be 3 negatives, 2 positives, +2. I think it's like a 1 success or something, right? So it's like all about the role play. That's like the most important thing about it. And so why or how do you use Fate? Fate is advertised that you can do whatever you want with it. It's like flexible. You can bring it to any sort of setting that you can think of to life with Fate. It's like about the storytelling, the role playing, the world building. It's like a sandbox system. So like me personally, I'm gonna be trying to use it for a zombie survival campaign next weekend. It's simple, it's easy, very easy to find resources online, and it's just like super beginner friendly. And there's even a more beginner friendly version called Fate Accelerated, which again, you can just download. But so it's advertised where like if there's anything that you really like Harry Potter, I think the systems like that exist already. Any sort of media that you want to like implement for bring it to life. That's what Fate is for.
I just want to touch on that. I didn't get to put in this PowerPoint, but another thing that kind of reminds me of Fate is GURPS. If anyone's heard of GURPS before, the General Universal Role-Playing System, that's also a good beginner-friendly thing if you want to make up something and just kind of roll with it like Fate. Anyway, moving on.
Hi. I have a confession to make. They actually were very organized on their stuff. If you notice, they have actual scripts and everything. I wrote everything down in 5 lines on my phone.
Yeah.
So, who's heard of Shadow Dark? I am not surprised by that in the slightest. Okay, so we did we get one hand?
No, I said I got one hand for fudge die earlier.
Oh, that's fair. So I don't normally play outside of D&D. That's just something that it's like, I like D&D, I like it, it's comfortable, it's comforting, I love it. It's my emotional support RPG.
It's good. Everyone here's played it.
I got basically kidnapped into doing Shadow Dark, and basically now I jump between Shadow Dark and D&D pretty much every other week, doing them. And it's kind of a wild concept because what happens is this introduced me to the concept of OSRs and NSRs. That's going to be old school Renaissance and new school Renaissance. The idea of games like old school D&D are more like your OSRs, AD&D, things like that. This is where we get the idea of like old school improvisational storytelling and narrative choices that make more of a game play than just rolling a chat. So you're like relying heavily on narration versus rolling to figure out stuff. Why does that matter? So, Shadow Dark is basically what happens. Hello? Shadow Dark is what happens when basically you take D&D, you make it a super dungeon crawler, you make it so that torches are an actual game time hour, and you have to keep track of that, and things go horribly bad if you let the light go out.
I like that.
Why does that matter? You always start at either level 0 or level 1. You only go up to level 10. You don't get to do any of the superhero stuff in D&D and everything like that. There's the concept that my referee in Shadow Dark uses where D&D, you end up treating everything like superheroes, that these are the Avengers, that the idea of these characters are impossible to kill or that there are solutions to killing. Now let's make it high stakes and make it so that your gnome bard has 6 HP at level 2, and that's one of the highest HPs in the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So NSRs keep so new school Renaissance keeps relatively the same idea. Shadow Dark is considered an NSR. So OSRs are going to be like your actual old school D&D, your dungeon crawlers, your traditional TTRPGs, things like that rely heavily on the mechanics. New school takes those mechanics, makes it a modernized version of that, streamlines everything, and makes it pretty rules light. We're talking about maybe 100 pages for the entirety of the rule book versus a 400-page book.
You don't want to read 400 pages of like rules. No one likes doing that.
Yeah, so we're making it wild thought, but we're making it high stakes but rules light. And what really helps with that is basically NSRs like to keep the feel of OSRs, but keeping that rules light and streamlining everything. It's leaner and it's more efficient in that sense. So the idea is that anybody can pick up and play this. I was basically told nothing about this. I was told roll a character, which by the way, when you roll a character, you don't get to pick and choose your stats. You roll in the order and then that decides your character. We're talking like old school style stuff where the dice.
For intelligence.
Was I going to originally play a gnome bard? Absolutely not. Was that what basically I rolled out? Absolutely. Compared to my D&D session that I play the same week, which I got to come up with this barbarian half-orc that's a cook on a Pirates campaign that is definitely knockoff One Piece. Hey, say
I have a homebrew campaign
we love it.
that's One Piece in all soaked.
I've read 25 chapters of One Piece, so I don't understand what's going on, and I just trust that everything's fun. And
Yeah, I got nothing. My DM's with me.
Alright. So why like does this help and everything like that? Like, why am I bringing up the fact that I do both? It's the fact that what I basically pull from this is Shadow Dark basically introduced me to the idea of pulling from different RPGs to make your experience better. So I started actually using logic that I used in Shadow Dark to make my D&D campaign better, and I started pulling stuff from my D&D campaign to make my Shadow Dark experience less traumatizing. So when you make a roll, the roll becomes the narrative tool. A good example is in my Shadow Dark campaign, I roll shit when it comes to my crossbow. So we've made it an entire thing that my gnome bard was a businessman and has no experience with weaponry. So he rolls like crap. And when he does roll correctly, it's him figuring it out, and we make that a narrative choice, because at the end of the day, you're not doing everything with a long backstory of everything that's happening. You're letting those rolls figure out your backstory. You're letting those rolls give motivation to your character, which started leading into my D&D campaign when things like that happened, where suddenly I was rolling bad or I was rolling weird rolls. We've all rolled those weird rolls that you're like, how does this make sense to the narrative? You actually can start like combining that and making it a narrative choice rather than just I rolled bad or I rolled really well. You can start actually incorporating it into your role play. The GM in Shadow Dark is not God. They are called a referee for a reason. Basically, it's a conversation that is happening between you and the players when it comes to things like Shadow Dark and NSRs. The idea is that the referee is going to basically set up the setting for you and then leave you to ask the questions about the setting, but oftentimes asking you the questions for that. Okay, so you're going back to the Hobbit village. There's only one of you that's a Hobbit type thing. Hobbit. Halfling, there we go. You're going back to the halfling village and you're only, one of your players is the only halfling there. You're now deciding, the referee is not deciding how halflings work, what is the halfling culture. You get to decide that, because it's now a question of what does your character do that defines the world around, not just what the GM has decided. So it means that you're not, it goes back to that whole idea of 100 pages versus 400 pages of like rules and lore and everything. The lore is what you come up with, and the lore is how you work with the referee versus what the referee creates and you have to follow along with.
We did have one more slide, but I think we are running out of time. We'll talk a little bit about it. It's Answer. Just we'll explain what it is.
So if you have...
So you're going to have to get like the expedited version.
Okay, so if you're a fan of fantasy and you decide maybe you want to take a break from fantasy, maybe you want to move into something more sci-fi. Who here likes giant robots? Show of hands. Awesome, great. Lancer.
I see one of you really doesn't like giant robots. Crossing your arms.
So what is Lancer? Lancer is
over there.
Lancer is a science fiction fantasy tabletop role-playing game created by Mikhail Lopez and Tom Morgan, author of the webcomic Kill 6 Billion Demons, and author of other TTRPGs such as Icon, Malagast, and Goblin with a Fat Ass. Don't worry about that one. Published by Massive Press.
I Googled something.
The game combines hard-hitting tactical mechanized combat with elements of drama and conflict from the utopias and dystopias of deep space, corporatism and a war on a galactic scale, and what it means to be alive in humanity's far future. Lancer is a suitable TTRPG alternative for those who are fans of the sci-fi genre and are looking for something outside of the traditional lens of high fantasy. Easy to learn, difficult to master mechanics, and the way war game-like combat between you, your squad of fellow mech pilots, and anything else that stands in your way. Featuring pre-existing lore in a deep setting that can be expanded upon in virtually any direction. One of the reasons you might play Lancer, to put it one, dual-faceted character creation. In Lancer, you're not only creating, your mech pilot, but you're also customizing and making your own mech. And that can either synergize with your playstyle or it can diversify to really vary your playstyle. Like, for example, say I want to play my Lancer pilot who's like a hacker. They're like a nerdy hacker type. They're really good at machines. But when I get in my big robot, I can either have, a robot that amplifies on hacking skills and, does good with, like, attacking the electrical systems of other machines and making them freeze up and stutter and things like that. Or I can just pick, like, a giant thing with a big hammer and just start golf swinging everybody. It doesn't matter. It's whatever I want. I can make your role in the game incredibly dynamic. Straightforward character progression. We're getting stronger as a character. It's very easy line to see where you're going. As a Lancer, you start at license level 0, which is like the base. Every time that you complete a mission, you go up to license level to a maximum of level 12, which will be license level 12. So there's only 12 levels in the game. And whatever your GM decides to mission, start to finish, you level up no matter what. It's definitely more of a milestone, like XP, rather than actual like physical combat totaling up the XP. Though there is a system for that too, but that's additional. Specific sections for narrative play. Lancer's not only combat oriented, but narrative time outside of the robot plays as much of a factor in shaping the story as it does spent in the robot. So one of my favorite things about Lancer is that there is a section for downtime specifically. In between missions, you and your party, you're deciding what you do. You want to go gain, power or gather intel or get into a fight just at a bar or go get a drink with someone or start trading information or items. You can do all that. It would just depend on, what skill triggers you can apply to it and be like, conceptual about it. Like for example, my hacker guy, I have a skill trigger called hack. And I could either, do something like I could hack a computer or I could hack this guy's limbs off. They both work. It just says hack. Free companion app for pilot and deck building. While not everything presented in Lancer is free, much of it is, including the aspects of character creation and building a mech. A glossy of mechanics both for combat narrative play. You can find this at compcon.app. That's compcon.app. In addition, you could also build your own virtual mech miniature at retrogrademinis.com. And there's a lot of variety of things. But presenter, what about the lore? I don't have nearly enough time for this. If I had 2 more hours, I wouldn't have nearly enough time for this.
Next year you'll see like next year you'll see like a panel on just Lancer. All right.
If you want like the 10-second version of it, your mech pilot's so good they had to create another name for you, and God doesn't want you to be immortal.
I have a question actually about it. Can your like robots combine like Voltron? Like, can they make is that a thing in the game?
We don't do that personally, but I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Just a couple things. One, Tortuga, my beloved. Two,
There we go.
can you go back to the website, some
Yes.
of the building? I just wanted to get that real quick.
All right. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to ask them about any of the ones that we talked about. No questions? All right, awesome. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, what's up?
Shadow Dark. That really intrigued me, and I definitely want to play it. It reminds me a lot of the video game Darkest Dungeon, where again, you
Yes,
like
it has a lot of influence on that, and
Okay.
it's very. If you like things like Darkest Dungeon, if you like things like old school Dark Souls, if you like things where it's just like genuine dungeon crawling, fixing for traps, things like that. Shadow Dark is absolutely built with that. The campaign that I'm currently in right now is actually set in a winter frontier, tundra frontier, and we're dealing with the fact that we've got, in the town we're in right now, 2 problems happening right now, plus a dungeon that could be dealt with. There's a necromancer that's making flesh golems that is harassing the town, and then there's a bandit king that is also harassing the town. They might be in cahoots with each other, they might be betraying each other. That's what we have to figure out. Did it almost end in a TPK? Absolutely.
So that is the end of our presentation. If you like this presentation, please follow us on social media. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.
Oh yeah, we've got a question over there. Oh no, go for it.
Have you guys ever played or heard of Spirit of the Century? Spirit of the Century.
Spirit of the Century.
Spirit of the Century. I have not heard of that one.
I've not heard about
So-
that one. What's it about?
So I was just kind of curious if you guys have heard of it. There's a game system that I really liked based upon, it's like a dime store novel based on like turn of the century, like the 1900s.
Oh, so like that.
Dime store novels. And you have episode like chapters before you start your game. So that's your character creation.
Yeah, Jess over there loves
Play
stuff.
to the characters, like personality archetypes based upon these chapters that you want to create. And then when you follow that role playing system, your DM gives you like menus or like goals or like role play the character. So it's very I wasn't sure if any of those systems kind of fall under role-play-centric versus like this.
Well, I'm definitely going to research it more because I'm intrigued.
It's a pretty vast.
Awesome.
Um,
Yes, question.
I was curious, when you mentioned like superhero, like a superhero RPG, I was curious if you guys ever heard of like the Sentinels RPG?
I have heard of Sentinels, yes.
I have heard of that one.
Do you like that one?
Oh, I love that one. Me and my friends are doing like a big campaign with that one to build like our own like jank superhero team.
Oh, that's
Sounds
awesome.
fun.
I'm trying to find like a superhero system that I can sort of make like a The Boys universe with. It's like, that's just, yes, what's up?
Got a question. What do you believe is the most obscure TTRPG you've ever heard of?
We probably haven't heard of it if it's super, super obscure.
And yes, that's a question for all.
I'm thinking because the referee,
Well,
the referee
no-
that does
no
my
one-
Shadow Dark is very, I love them dearly, but they are very snobbish about their TTRPGs. So I'm trying to think of what they have listed to me that could be relevant. And I would imagine that in terms of them, any of the new Kickstarter TTRPGs that are coming out right now that are just now starting to come out are going to lean more towards that obscurity because we're starting to see an influx of like actual genuine like niche TTRPGs that are focusing way out of the D&D scope of things.
This one isn't obscure, but I just like saying it. Workboard. It's just a fun thing to say.
Yeah, Morkboard. That's a good one.
In response to your thing about like the boys style thing,
Yeah.
there's a superhero module for the Genesis system that I think
Oh.
works great. Genesis does a really good job of you technically succeeded, but something horrible happens, which is kind of the whole
like
thing of the boys.
I'll look it up. Genesis.
Yes, Genesis. The other thing
Genesis,
is
Century.
don't play Shadowrun. The book is terrible.
Spirit of the Century.
Okay.
It's so bad. It's so dense.
Thank you so much for everyone
Thank you
for coming.
so much for coming to our panel this year.
I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your night.